Here's 8 tips on getting yourself across that starting line. Tip number 1 is to remember that it's always your choice, right? You know, whether you drink or you don't drink, it's always going to be your choice. That's the thing that people sort of try and fuzz around, is they think, well, you know, like, I'll do it tomorrow. That's a choice, right? I can't do this. That's another choice. Any choice that you make, whether it's pushing yourself forward or pulling yourself backwards, it's your choice to do the thing, you know. It's your choice to either think up the reasons why you can do it or the reasons why you can't do it. It's your choice to think up the excuses why you can't do it, or to get up off your arse and inspire yourself. Find things that are going to inspire you. Make sure that you're inspired all the time, right? That's always going to be your choice. So that's my first tip, is this whole journey is about you and your choices. Tip number 2 is never look at this like it's out of your control. Like it's there's a faulty gene inside you. There's a disease that you've got that you've acquired over many years. You haven't. It's a habit. You know, there might be a certain proclivity for people to become more addicted to certain things, you know, it's easier for them to go down the easy route, let's say, you know, to look for instant gratification. But I think that 99.9% of that is learned. That you learn how to do this either from very early in your life, or you learn how to do it as you're going along. And I see kids that are growing up now, and I think, you know, Jesus, when they get to 18 years of age now, or whatever it is, the time that they leave home, they're going to be absolutely screwed, because they're so spoiled in life. You know, they're getting, as soon as they demand something, they get it, you know. And when they get out into the real world and harsh reality strikes, some of these kids are going to be fucked, and it's no fault of their own. You know, it's the fault of the people that are bringing them up. You know, it's the same thing with them. You know, their parents were probably given the same thing, or, you know, we're sort of brainwashed now into believing that, you know, like every child has to be raised in a certain way. I remember seeing on the sort of the British equivalent of the Shark Tank. I can't remember the name of it now. Anyway, this guy came up with a business idea. He presented it himself. The Dragon's Den, that was the thing. Presented this idea to the 5 dragons. And it was, do you know these rugby caps that some of the rugby players wear? And, you know, they have to wear them because they get a lot of damage. So it's like a soft rugby helmet that protects their head. And this guy had come up with the concept of putting these on children when they're out playing in the schoolyard. And it was just like, the 5 dragons, or at least the ones with children, were disgusted. And they were sort of like, you know, what the fuck would you put your child out that? The whole, you know, this crash bang thing that children go through is a learning process. You know, when you see cats playing, or, you know, kittens playing, or puppies playing, it's the same thing. You see children playing, they are going to get scraped knees, they're going to get busted lips, they're going to get, you know, knocked heads. And that's just a part of it, you know. You can't hide your kids in cotton wool, because you're not always going to be there. I mean, I think it's playing out now. You know, you see people living with their parents until the parents die, and then taking over the house and never having a life themselves. But look, where did I start this one out? It was about that there is no such thing as a disease, and there is no such thing as genetics. Not to the extent, if you start believing in that kind of stuff, right, the disease or the genetic fault of alcohol, then you're doing yourself a massive disservice. You're putting a huge roadblock in your own way, and there's no need for that. You know, let the scientists all discuss all this and talk about all this and come up with their own fucking theories and stuff like that. But, you know, it doesn't do you any good, right? All it's going to do is give these people an excuse to come up with another fucking pharmaceutical that they can pour down people's throats and make billions out of. So It's always your choice. You are in control. Another part of this, so tip number 3, is that cravings are also in your control. Cravings are, they're in your head for the most part. I mean, certainly you get physical symptoms of it, right? You get a certain feeling, and you get a certain feeling in the pit of your stomach, but you probably get that same feeling when you're going on a fair ride, when you're on one of these things which takes you high up in the air, butterflies in your stomach and all that kind of stuff. So, but if you go on the same fair ride 10 times, then you won't get those feelings anymore. And it's nothing to do with the fair ride. The fair ride is exactly the same. It's to do with you as a person. It's to do with you in your mind. You've done it 2, 3, 4 times, and you know that there's no danger. You're strapped into this chair. You're strapped into whatever. You're not going to fall out of it. So eventually the novelty wears off, and you don't feel. I mean, you might feel the buzz of the G-force as you're flying around on a roller coaster, but you don't feel the mental thing anymore, and therefore the mind is not controlling your body in the same way. So cravings are all under your control, and you can stop them within a couple of minutes. They're very momentary. They will move away if you get up and do something else and don't focus and dwell on the cravings. Tip number 4 is to compare the discomfort that you're feeling now if you've quit drinking, the discomfort of the cravings, the discomfort of not being able to sleep really, the discomfort of being a bit shaky and out of your comfort zone, to the discomfort that you have been feeling for donkey's years, right, with all the hangovers, all the damage that is starting to be caused to your body. Compare those 2 discomforts and which is the worst. So are you going to carry on putting yourself through hell and exacerbating those discomforts that you feel from drinking, or are you going to put up with the short-term discomfort of quitting drinking, get past it, move on? It takes a few days for the worst symptoms to wear off. Then it takes a few weeks before your system sort of stabilizes. It takes a bit longer to get your life in order and to choose different things, but you'll get there. So that's tip number 4, is to compare the discomforts. I often tell people not to look back at their past, because the past is not really relevant to the future, in the sense that it's your choice whether you repeat the past or carry on and do something differently. Always your choice, right? Just because you've done something in the past, it doesn't mean to say that you've got to do it in the present or the future, right? That's tip number 5, is that your drinking matters, or why you drank matters. And if you still like drinking, that matters. Why? Because it's going to keep pulling you back to the alcohol, right? To the drinking behaviour. And that's what you really want to try and get away from. So you've got to understand why you like drinking. What is it about drinking that gives you the buzz? I'm not talking about the drunkenness, but the feeling that you want to drink, right? You have to understand that about yourself. And that sort of leads me to tip number 6, which is to change that thinking, right? You understand why you like to drink. What is it that's drawing you into the boozing? Once you understand that, then to change it, to learn how to reject alcohol in your life. Learn how to reject the alcohol thinking. Learn how to reject the alcohol rituals. Learn how to reject the alcohol behavior, and ultimately learn how to reject the alcohol habit. There's a few ways of doing this. Most of these things are going to happen inside in your mind, and you've got to sort of cut this down to the smallest part that you can, right? To chunk it down into every time you even think about drinking alcohol, right? Every time you look at a wine glass and think that's a nice looking wine glass, or look at a design of a wine label and think that's a lovely looking design, or look at people and think, every time you get a positive thought about alcohol or alcohol paraphernalia or alcohol drinking or alcohol drinking behavior, you've got to reject it. You've got to think about it from the perspective of reality, what that is. It's a drug. The nice glasses, the nicely designed wine bottles, these are all designed to make you addicted, to bring you in and to bullshit you up with all this stuff, to get you coming back time and time and time again, and realize that every time you go back to the poison well, that's exactly what it does to you, poisons you. So just think about it from that perspective, that you have to reject everything to do with alcohol, the paraphernalia, the thinking, the rituals, the behavior and the habits. And tip number 7 is to find alternatives for everything that you rely on alcohol for. For socializing, for sleeping, for relaxing, for problem solving. And there are many alternatives don't forget that when you're a kid, right, you can find many solutions to the same problem, right? When you don't drink, when you're involved in your life outside of alcohol, there are many different solutions that you come to. But because we drink alcohol, we tend to focus in on the one thing more and more and more. So we might focus in on it at the beginning just to get us over the threshold of a pub without feeling shit, without feeling shy, to be able to talk to somebody without feeling shy. But then you realize that you can do that and you carry on doing that with the same thing. You don't learn the skills that are needed to do it for real, right? So all you've got is a watered down basic version of the skill. And as anyone knows, the more you drink, the less sociable you are. And eventually, as you start out with this journey, you might need only one pint of beer, one can of beer, one glass of wine, whatever it is, to allow you to be sociable. Yeah? Then you need 2. Then you need 3. And then you need 4. And it goes on like that because of alcohol tolerance. And once you get into this role of this is what you have, this is what you need to do this, you're stuck into the cycle now. You need to drink in order to be able to talk to people in a social situation. So, but the alcohol, 4 pints of alcohol is going to do a lot more garble into your mind than 1 pint of alcohol. It's doing a lot more damage to your insides. 6 or 7 pints is going to do a lot more damage than 4 or 5. So, it's just a bad tool. So the alternative is to learn how to do it. How do you do that? You have to find that out. You have to go for courses in self-confidence. You have to go out and do it, go out and be with people and talk to people. I mean, experience is how we learn. More than anything else, you'll learn far more by doing something than you will ever learn by reading something or listening to somebody else and listening to their journey and how they did it. You have to do it, and that's the crunch of everything. Is if you don't do it, you're not going to learn, period. So that's the tip number 7, is to find alternatives, and there are plenty of alternatives for everything that you can find with alcohol. There are plenty of alternatives. And tip number 8 is that you need to reward non-drinking behaviour, drinking behaviour that's pulling you away from alcohol, and you need to correct any behaviour that's pulling you towards alcohol, right? So as I was saying earlier on, with the drinking thinking, you've got to reject that drinking thinking, and the only way you can do that is by noticing every time it comes up in your head and correcting it. Every time you feel that pull towards any aspect of alcohol drinking, the behaviour. Like I say, it's not just the alcohol; it is the whole thing. So you've got to gradually correct this behaviour as you go along, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen within days or weeks. This is going to take months, and it's not one of those things that happens, that just comes up all of a sudden. You've got this drinking thinking and you haven't got it right. It's a gradual process. It's a gradual decline over many years, over many months I should say, not many years. Sometimes it takes many years. I still get it after. I'm on to my 5th year now, and I still, every so often, I get I look at a glass of red wine and think, oh, that looks lovely, and it's the brainwashing. I'm going back to Ireland soon, and I know I'm going to be in a pub with my favourite drink. At the time was Guinness. That was my favourite drink of all time. That's what I used to drink, and I'm going to cope with that. I'm not going to drink. There's no fucking way on this planet I'm going to drink, right? I won't taste it. I'm not going to. But I know, thinking about it now, it's like I feel the bullshit. I feel the brainwashing, and that's all it is. So you have to constantly correct for that, and don't think that the thinking by itself means anything, right? That it means that you're an alcoholic. It means that you're a lost cause. It doesn't. It's just thinking. If people ran through with everything that they thought, there'd be more people locked up in prison than there would be outside of prison. How many times have you sort of had a conversation with somebody and you've just thought to yourself, I would love to smack that person in the face now because of what they're saying or who they are, or just, you know what I mean? But you don't. If you did, like I say, you'd be in big trouble. So this is where free will comes in. You've got a choice in this. Everything is under your control. So always believe that about yourself. Always. So you need to correct anything that's pulling you towards drinking and reward things that are pulling you away. Oftentimes these new activities are going to be a reward in themselves, but in the beginning they can be very strange. Everything is new. Being without alcohol in certain situations is new, so you have to be kind to yourself. And they can be anything. It'd be very simple rewards. There's no point in me going into them here, but so that's tip number 8, is to reward yourself for behaviours that are pulling you away from alcohol, and correct any behaviours that are pulling you towards alcohol. Until next time, I'm Kevin O'Hara for alcoholmastery.com. Stay safe, keep the alcohol out your mouth, onwards and upwards. Good luck.